in the midst of giving the scene descriptions to your players, you're describing the NPCs, the actions that are going on around, and all of a sudden they ask a question that you weren't prepped for. Do you go to your manuals and thumb through? Sometimes you have to grab notes and recheck what you'd written down. Sometimes you have to make things up on the fly. There's always opportunities to get sidetracked and derailed while you're working on your games. In this video, we're going to talk about the most important tool that I feel every great GM has. Before we jump into today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you don't mind the notifications, be sure to ding that bell. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, and leave a comment down below on content that you'd like to see us cover in our video series. Now, there are several great GMs out there. Many of them have YouTube channels where they talk about different techniques and tips and give hints and guidance, and there's so much great content out there. Having been a GM for as long as I have, one of the things that I've picked up from not only a lot of experience, but from watching and learning from other great GMs is something that doesn't get covered as much in detail. And that's probably, in my opinion, the most important tool that any great GM has: organization. Whether you're an experienced GM or a brand new GM, maybe you're just thinking about becoming a GM. One of the most important things that I've found has helped me deliver better content and be more consistent in both delivery and that content is organization. Now, there are lots of different ways and tools to stay organized as a GM. There are lots of different programs that you can choose from. There are tools that you can download and use at your own pace. I use a great plethora of them, but for me, organization, especially running multiple campaigns, is very important, not only to keep everything consistent for my players, but also for myself, by having everything I need for each campaign contained in what I call a campaign binder. It's a great way that I've found to stay organized myself so that I can consistently be delivering the same quality and content to the players at my table. Now, all of my campaign binders have the same progression so that I can be consistent myself in how I organize the materials I need for my games. Because the majority of my campaigns take place in my homebrew world, one section that all of them have is just information on the regions of that world. This allows me to stay in the same realm, on the same world, but be able to localize my games to separate the games into the different areas so that I don't have a lot of crossover and don't confuse myself in that aspect. Like published material, it's great to be able to run campaigns simultaneously in Ravenloft, in Icewind Dale, and along the Sword Coast. They're close enough together to where you can feasibly have a lot of the same content, but they're spread out enough that you're not going to overstep yourself or confuse yourself in what content you've presented to which campaign party members. Keeping things consistent from campaign binder to campaign binder, I have a section specifically for NPCs. I start off really simple with 10 sheets of 60 NPC names that I have just created at random that I can reference when I need to just real quickly introduce an NPC. This gives me 600 NPC names to use. As I use them, I just make a quick jot of what the NPC kind of is doing, who they are, and how I've used them. Some of these NPCs get to be a little bit more prominent in the game, almost like returning characters or guest stars. Those ones I'll actually circle as well, and I can add further in that section a little bit more about the NPC. I can flesh them out and have them be that returning character that's consistent. They don't have completely different motivations or appearance or even their vocal Habits I can keep consistent from game to game, have them continue to pop up as the players interact with them, and get some consistency in it. If I wasn't organized in this fashion, I wouldn't be able to do that. One week I may have an NPC that I present as a male baker, and the next week it could be a female butcher. Without organization, I'd have a lot of difficulty in making sure that the content I'm presenting to the characters is consistent. Now, I also have a section that I use just for notes. What's going on in the campaign world, kind of what are the interactions that the characters are having, and how is that impacting the populace in general? Are the characters really seen as the heroes of the region that they're in or the kingdoms that they're in? Or are they starting to skew a little more as villainous? That allows me to not only make sure that the interactions they're having at new places and places they've previously visited grow and develop and change with the story and with their interactions to that story, but it allows me to make sure that actions have consequences. Additionally, based on the type of game that I'm playing, some of the content out of the manuals I use more than others. For instance, in our Last Light campaign, a couple of the most important features to my players and their characters seem to be the accumulation of not only wealth but magic as well. So utilizing a lot of the rules and guides on both magic items and pricing, I'm able to put that in for quick reference into my campaign binder, so I've got it close at hand and I don't have to keep thumbing through books to find things out. In my Beyond Death's Door, the most popular things are conditions. Now, generally on the inside of my Dungeon Master screen, there's a great section for conditions. Because we're playing virtually, I don't have my Dungeon Master screen up all the time. So again, putting in those condition tables into the binder in a quick place that I know to go to for a quick reference really makes it easy for me to quickly identify what conditions are being set and how that's going to interact both the characters as well as their opponents. Finally, for me, a section that I have is all about calendar. Many of my campaigns are set to tone and time. There are set actions that are being taken place, and there's a set time limit for those to kind of key or happen. And so tracking time is super important. Sometimes I have to bend my own rules to be able to do this. For instance, in the Kingdoms of Esbar campaign that I ran, as the planar gate was beginning to open, when the alignment of the planes was taking place, my characters were actually caught in the Shadowfell and moving through different planes. I had to kind of bend the rules a little bit and put it to where as they're doing this planar travel, time in the material plane was not being affected or not being affected equally. So for every year they were in or month they were in, it was just a fraction of time, just seconds or minutes in the prime material plane. This allowed them to have fantastic adventures that they were really enjoying both as players and characters. It was building up on their own stories as well as the story of the game, but it didn't impact the end goal. Now, if I wanted to hurry it up, I would have had the time measurements stay the same. But by making notes for myself in my quick reference guide on how that time was affected in the different planes, I was able to kind of utilize it to let them have the agency to explore and do some fantastic things in different planes without affecting their goals in the material plane. And if we needed to hurry things up, they quickly realized that things were moving faster because messages were coming faster, and there were a few different indicators that they could use. Now, my type of organization is definitely very old school, a lot of pen and paper, and my campaign binders, which I refer to. I do, however, use other tools as well, from my software and being able to scan and send documents. It really allows me to make sure that my players have access to materials while we're doing everything virtually. And while I'm always looking for feedback from my players, one thing that I continue to hear is that the consistency level of my campaigns has been really well received from the players. For me, that's super important. Because the type of games that I generally run are series based, where it's a continuation of a overarching story and a focus on the character stories within that story, I'm able to transition from session to session very well because I'm taking the time to organize my notes and make myself notes after each game and then utilize that information in preparation of the next game. By staying organized, I'm able to keep those sessions moving forward without losing any of what's come before. While sometimes this can be more challenging, especially when you're juggling so much in life, one of the key factors that I've seen from every great GM that I've studied and looked up to and really kind of dived into their tips and tricks. Again, they don't talk a whole lot about their organization, what they're using and how, but I feel that all of them have a great process of staying organized so that they can keep progression moving forward, keep their stories consistent, keep the way they're delivering content consistent, and capture their successes and build upon those, as well as any of their failures, and avoid those going forward. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, one of the first parts about being a Dungeon Master talks about that consistency, the play consistency. Again, for me, consistency is very important, and I feel that comes with good organization. With a lot of my other passions, it kind of falls right in suit. Whether I'm cooking something, whether I'm riding my motorcycle, whether I'm skating, whether I'm drawing, or painting miniatures, organization really helps me be able to dive in quickly. I know where everything's at. I'm able to get in the mood and really take on whatever I'm working on because I have good organization from the get-go. I know where things are. I can access them quickly. If I need to make a change, I can go right to whatever needs to change and be able to make those adjustments and then quickly move on. So as you're continuing to GM, really stop and take a moment and appreciate what you're doing for your organization. Look for opportunities to improve your organization. What are you struggling with the most, and what are some ways that you can overcome those struggles? As a new GM, don't hesitate to start thinking about how you're going to organize, both for upcoming sessions as well as for storage for your notes, your ideas, your creative thought processes. What's inspiring you? How are you going to organize those to best make the positive impacts on your games and the delivery of your games? For me, it's an ever-growing opportunity of improvement. As I utilize my campaign binders as well as online tools, I'm finding new and unique ways to blend the two, from having separate folders and files for each campaign to having shared folders and files for things that I'm referencing often. Making copies of the most important things and making sure they're in each of my binders in the right place is great because I have consistency for the world at large. Because we're playing in different regions of the world in the different campaign, there's still overwhelming consistency. And looking for new ways to challenge myself to both take better notes and integrate those into my campaign binders and thought processes for how to move story forward, to how those actions that my characters are making in game sessions are affecting the antagonists as well as the world at large. Organization for me is really one of the key fundamentals that great GMs have, even though we don't always talk about it or we don't really show a lot of our tools just because they become second habit to us. It's something that I think every great GM and every aspiring GM really needs to spend a little bit more time thinking about and broadcasting how those have allowed us to be more successful in our games. I'm going to give you some examples on the opportunities that organization and keeping consistent organization has helped me with in my own GMing. One of the big things that comes to mind right off the bat is as I have consistent place for things like the maps I create and use in game, as I complete a campaign, I have good reference to be able to go back to and draw those again. So finding ways to recycle things, I've got consistent placement on where I keep everything in my binders. I can quickly go and reference them. I can pull them out and restart a campaign with good similarities. If someone wants to play in the same campaign style with a different character class, let's say, they want to experience things that they'll remember and they had fun with, or they wanted to try something different, there's good consistency for that. As well as by maintaining them in my binders, I'm able to have them in good condition. I can reuse them and adjust them if I need to, but everything is contained and I'm able to re-reference and think about what did I come up with challenges with, where was I challenged for my players and their characters, and how can I make improvements on that going forward. Additionally, the game aids that I create, I can quickly say what did players really enjoy and what did they not. This allows me to focus my time in prep and make sure that I'm spending more time on things that players generally accept and really appreciate, and not spend a lot of time and get frustrated on things that I could pour hours into and nobody really cares. This gives me the opportunity to focus in on what's most impactful beyond myself. Additionally, things like my 10 pages of 60 NPC names, as I go through and cycle through those, it allows me the opportunity to utilize characters again and again in recurring roles, even if it's down the road quite a ways. For something that happened early on in the campaign, the characters can re-bump into one of the early NPCs that I introduced, who also has had growth and opportunity to change based on character actions. They may have different expectations on what those characters should be doing or how they should interact with those characters. It's a great way to revisit some of the things that you've already done and already introduced and not have to reinvent the wheel every session. Going back to your wealth of information gives you that opportunity to show that even though your world is constantly growing and evolving, your characters may be exploring and experiencing new sections of your game world, there's still that consistency in running into that first level encounter where they helped a farmer out. Those can bring back a lot of great memories in early gameplay, as well as show that the character's actions have reactions and consequences. By recycling and reusing some of the things I've already introduced, I'm not having to spend time recreating things or creating things anew. I'm able to kind of flesh out things a little bit more and show growth and opportunity for the characters to impact others around them. This makes the world feel a little more real to them. Also, as I'm prepping up for sessions, going back to the notes, I'm able to really look and see what are some of the things that the players seem to really enjoy and what are things that they did not enjoy. Those are some of the notes I take during sessions and really watch the players to see what are things that they really enjoy and not. This allows me to start crafting the stories for them within the overall story arc to get better interactions from the players. If they feel like their expectations are being met, if they feel like they're being catered to in a large sense of content for them, they're going to be more invested in your game. By utilizing your notes and re-looking and revisiting your session notes and what hit highs and what hit lows, you can cater your games to your players, figure out how to have great fits at the table, and really how to bring them further and further into your game as well as the gaming community as a whole. It also allows you to really critically judge yourself. Are you attracting the right type of player? Are you presenting yourself as a firm but fair GM? And what are opportunities that you can improve on based on feedback you've gotten or even reactions you've gotten from players? This type of really diving in and looking at the notes has really helped me look at how I GM, how I present content to the player characters, and what type of content I really want to play with. I'll be the first to admit I'm not the right GM for everybody, but I know enough about myself and what I'm comfortable and capable of creating to really find players who want that type of role-playing storytelling from a GM. And it allows me to look and see what kind of tools and tips and tricks did I use in the past to get them engaged and get them brought into the game and get them to care about not only their characters but the game world at large. What are motivators for the player style that I like to have at my game table? Again, a lot of this continues to go back to consistency, which, as mentioned, is really important in the DM guide. One of the first things it talks about with being a GM. Having that consistency and really driving home who you are as a GM, the type of game you're running, the type of players you want to play with, the type of players you want to attract, and how to really deliver together as a cohesive playing group. A great story with great content comes down to being organized and being able to take something that multiple people have a great passion for, rolling it together and presenting it as a complete story with a start, a middle, and an end. So as you're prepping for your next game, or you're preparing a new campaign, or even just a one-shot, stop and spend a moment and think about your organization. Think about what's important to you. How can you get that content in a great, easy to manage manner? And then how can you utilize that organization skills of your own to present content consistently to your characters, be able to go back to the font and reuse again? And how is that going to better your ability to GM stories going forward? If you're not the most organized GM or the most organized person at all, don't hesitate to drop a comment below. I'd love to give you more ideas and tips and tricks on what I do with my campaign binders, as well as some of my online tools that I use. Even direct you to some of the other great GMs that I love getting information from, so you can see some of the tools they use. I'll try to cherry pick those pieces where they show not only their tools, but how they organize and keep those tools for quick, easy access. Organization, while it may not be the forefront and funnest thing to talk about, definitely is an important block for great GMing, and I really recommend that you spend a little bit of time critically thinking about how you organize, why you organize, and how you can use that organization to better offer future storytelling opportunities to people who are coming into the community new. Until next week, keep rolling. I hope you enjoyed that video. Here's a link to another video that you may enjoy. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you'd like to support us, make sure you check out the description of the video with some links and leave a comment to let us know where will your adventures take you.